All right, let's talk about this. Let's talk about it. Is it possible for the Saints to trade Derek Carr? Now, when we discuss Derek Carr, I think most of the time the discussion goes one of two ways. Are the Saints going to restructure this deal like they always do, save some money? I mean, you have to basically restructure Derek Carr's deal to get compliant with the cap. Are you going to do that and try to figure that out with the numbers, or are you just going to cut him? And there are positives to both of those arguments. The positive to having him play is that all that money that you're tying up, whether he's on the team or not, is actually being used on the field. That's a positive. If you cut him, you're going to save a little bit of money, and you realize that the organization is moving in a very direct path away from Carr towards something else in the future, and I think we can all agree that that is a positive as well. Either one of those has its positives one way or another. You probably, as a fan of the Saints or someone who follows the team, you probably have a preferred path, but both of them have their merits. I think the best of both worlds is a potential trade. And it may be pie in the sky. I get it. But let's just discuss it for the sake of the situation. There is reportedly, and this is according to Albert Breer of SI, a host of teams that are now interested in making a move for Matthew Stafford from the Rams. Breer reports the Browns, Raiders, Giants, and Steelers have all shown interest in making a move for Matt Stafford. And I can argue that, Matt Stafford and Derek Carr are not worlds apart at this point in time. Carr's a little bit younger. He doesn't have a Super Bowl ring. He hasn't thrown for as many yards. But I would say both of those two guys at this point in their careers are proven, functional quarterbacks in the NFL. Do I think either one of them are going to win the MVP next year? No. And I know there are a lot of Saints fans that just do not like Derek Carr at all. But it's not like he's been atrocious in New Orleans. He's not. And I know that Matt talks about the Emperor of Empty Yards on his show, and there's certainly some merit to that. There are times where Derek Carr has slung it around and racked up yards when it wasn't all that important, and the wins did not necessarily follow. But he played 17 games 2 years ago, if that's how we want to term that, 2023, 2 years ago. And he threw 25 touchdowns against 8 interceptions. He completed 68% of his throws. He was okay. This past year, he was hurt, and he missed time. But in 10 games, the Saints were 5-5 with a massive amount of injuries on offense and some on defense. He threw 15 touchdowns against 5 picks. He completed 68% of his throws. He is functional as a quarterback. The Saints cannot use Derek Carr in 2025 to further their organization, in my opinion. That's my opinion. I don't think the roster is good enough that Derek Carr at quarterback is going to propel them to win the division and win a playoff game and be a threat to make an NFC title game. I think we can probably agree that we're all on the same page there. But if you have a functional roster, or you think you do, and you're just a quarterback away, which is why you would move for Matt Stafford, Derek Carr is not the worst second option. They're not that different. So if these teams consider themselves, I'm not talking about the Raiders, who are clearly not going to take him back, but if the Steelers and that defense feel like Carr's an upgrade over what they had last year, which is a young guy who's never won anything and an old guy who people don't really like to be around all that much. Maybe the Jets, who move on from Rodgers, who think they've got a great defense as well and some good skill position players, maybe they want to try that again. I'm not saying it's likely, but man, would it be awesome. Because if the Saints could move on from Carr, one, they might get something of an asset for him. And two, you would save over $11 million in salary. So that's an ideal world. That's a dream world. That's a utopia if it could happen. And the reason I'm not completely ruling it out is just because over the course of the last 10 years, I have just watched so many NFL teams do things that I deem to be fairly irrational for that one position on the field. Whether it's the draft, whether it's free agency, whether it's trades, whether it's signing guys past their prime, whether it's trying once again to go off of a potential that's not realized. Not every situation's the same, but you would have to agree that a lot of organizations do a lot of things that make you scratch your head a little bit because you're dealing with the quarterback. And again, to reiterate before we go one step deeper into this, I know that Saints fans think Derek Carr is atrocious. I'm telling you that he's not atrocious. He's just not the right fit for New Orleans right now. I think if you take Drew Brees off one of those late teams in his career and plug Derek Carr in there, the Saints are probably still a threat. They're not as good, but there's probably still a threat. This roster, he's no use to you. He's not good enough to elevate this roster. I don't know if anybody is, but he's not good enough to elevate this roster. That's different than how he fits somewhere else. So I'm just telling you, if everybody's beating down the door or at least knocking on it for Matt Stafford, they may show up for Derek Carr too, willing to give less assets. So the good news is, for the sake of this discussion, it's not something we have to really think about for a long time. We don't have to question whether or not this is realistic for months. This has to happen before March 14th. It has to happen in the next 20 days. Because at that point, $30 million of his base salary becomes guaranteed. That's the third day of the league year. So once that happens, we don't have to have the discussion because nobody's knocking on the door for that. But if you can start to exchange assets, see who's taking what portion of what money, and start to work together, I'm not telling you it's impossible. The Saints have had a lot of bad breaks. The best coach in the history of the franchise decided he was done. And then you thought you had a good team last year for 2 weeks, and everybody got hurt. And everybody got hurt the year before that. And in Breeze's final year was COVID, and you couldn't be in the dome. Like, there have been a lot of things that have gone wrong for the Saints. Maybe, just maybe, it's about that time that one big thing goes right. And I'm not suggesting they would get some kind of king's ransom for Derek Carr. Quite the opposite, in fact. But just taking a few bucks off the books, taking him and that question out of your hands at this point, and just moving forward with a full understanding that whether it's Spencer Rattler or whether it's some aging veteran or whether it's a draft pick that you want to make early in this draft, like, just the understanding that you're moving on and moving forward is a step in the right direction to me. We're talking baby steps here for the Saints. For too long, they have looked at this as, what's that one next move we can make to get there? What's the one next move we can make? And now we all know you're not one move away from getting there. You're a lot of baby steps away from even being close. Maybe this could be a stroke of good fortune for New Orleans, that they take a baby step away from Derek Carr towards the future because someone thinks they're closer to winning than the Saints are. That would be my sincere hope in this whole deal. If you want to read more about this, you can at louisianasports.net. Ross Jackson's got the piece up. Again, he mentions the Browns, the Giants, the Steelers, and the Jets among teams that could be interested over the next 20 days. Man, would that be an awesome start to the Kellen Moore era if they could not only move on from Derek Carr, but get some assets back for it, or an asset back for it, while helping financially. Maybe a pipe dream. Maybe it's just pie in the sky here, but I'm hopeful that the Saints can potentially get that done. If you're looking for Saints content, you can find ours, Hunt on Saints, or on YouTube or wherever you find your podcasts. You can Hunt on Saints. You like, subscribe, rate, and review all Saints all year round. Also, louisianasports.net, Ross Jackson does an awesome job of keeping up with the Saints, and he just pulled into Indianapolis as we speak here, so he's going to have coverage from the Combine all week long for louisianasports.net, and, of course, his podcast, Locked On Saints. So give him a follow and go ahead and take in all that content as the NFL calendar just never truly stops at this point. Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button. Leave your comments in the section below. and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.